They said it was just a routine patrol. But in the golden silence of Maple Ridge, a little girl knelt beside her bleeding dog, and the police who pulled the trigger called it self-defense. What they didn't know was that her father wasn't just a grieving dad. He was the ghost of war trained to disappear, but born to protect. And this time, he wasn't going to stay silent. It was the kind of autumn afternoon that made the town of Maple Ridge look like it belonged in a postcard. The golden sun spilled across the manicured lawns and neatly paved sidewalks, casting long shadows from the picket fences and well-trimmed trees. The air was crisp, scented faintly of cedar mulch and distant wood smoke. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that only came in small affluent suburbs like this one, nestled just outside of Portland, Oregon. 11-year-old Emily Brooks walked slowly down the curved sidewalk of Hawthorne Lane, her hand wrapped around the leash of her golden retriever Hunter. Emily was slender with wide brown eyes that always looked like they were holding a question she never quite asked. Her skin was the soft tone of warm mahogany, and her hair was braided neatly, falling down her back like a velvet ribbon. She wore a worn NASA sweatshirt, 2 sizes too big. It had belonged to her mother, who had died in a car accident nearly a year ago. Emily hadn't spoken much since then, not to her father, not to her teachers. But to Hunter she spoke often. Hunter was 6 years old, a large golden retriever with a thick honey-colored coat and deep amber eyes that seemed to understand more than any animal ought to. He had once been trained as a service dog for veterans suffering from PTSD, but had been reassigned after bonding with Emily during a therapy session she had attended with her father Noah. Hunter was calm, intelligent, and fiercely gentle. He never barked unless necessary, and had a quiet, almost regal way of moving as though he had walked this earth for a very long time. Emily and Hunter made their way past a row of homes, many with Halloween decorations already set up, plastic skeletons grinning from porches, inflatable pumpkins bobbing on neatly trimmed lawns. The two were a familiar sight in the neighborhood, though not everyone greeted them kindly. Emily knew which houses smiled and waved, and which ones shut their blinds as they passed. Across the street on a broad wooden porch sat Wanda Creighton. Ms. Creighton was in her late 70s, a tall woman with sharp cheekbones and silver-white hair, always pinned in a bun. She wore a lavender shawl draped over her shoulders and always carried a hardcover book in her lap, though she seldom turned the pages. A retired history teacher and widow, Miss Creighton, had seen too much to be naive and not enough to be cynical. She believed in kindness, though she had little patience for ignorance. She loved Emily like a grandchild, and always greeted Hunter first. "Looking handsome today, Hunter," she called, raising her cup of chamomile tea. Emily smiled slightly and waved, not speaking, but her eyes warmed. Hunter's tail wagged in slow, sweeping arcs. They were approaching the intersection near Maple Grove Park when the police cruiser pulled alongside them. Emily felt it before she saw it, that slight pressure in the air, the drop in her stomach. Her father had taught her what to do. Don't run. Keep your hands visible. Be polite. Don't argue. Just breathe. The car rolled to a slow stop. 2 officers stepped out. The first was Officer Brent Logan. He was in his late 40s, tall, with a hard jaw, and deep-set eyes that rarely blinked. His skin was pale, and his short-cropped hair was thinning under his cap. Logan had a heavy presence, like someone who had spent his life trying to make others feel smaller. His uniform was immaculate, and his belt hung with unnecessary severity. He had been on the force for 20 years and carried with him a simmering mistrust of change, especially change that came in shades of brown or black. The second officer was a Mason Reed, younger, maybe late 20s, clean-shaven and wiry. He looked like someone who hadn't yet decided what kind of man he wanted to be. There was uncertainty in his posture and a nervous flicker in his gaze. He had transferred into Maple Ridge only 6 months prior, and was still in that stage of learning how far the boundaries really stretched. Logan approached first one hand resting near his holstered weapon. "Afternoon," he said. "You live around here?" Emily nodded slowly, keeping her voice even. "Yes, sir, on Birchwood Drive. I'm just walking my dog." "That's a big dog for a little girl," Logan commented, looking down at Hunter with sharp eyes. "You sure he's under control?" "Yes, sir," she replied, her grip tightening ever so slightly on the leash. "He's trained." Reed hovered back, watching, unsure whether to interject or simply follow Logan's lead. Logan stepped closer. "We've had reports of break-ins recently. You haven't seen anyone suspicious, have you?" Emily shook her head. "No, sir. Just walking." Hunter shifted slightly. Standing closer to Emily, now his eyes fixed on Logan. His posture wasn't tense but alert, like a guardian assessing a potential threat. "That dog looks ready to snap," Logan muttered. "He's not aggressive," Emily said, her voice now tinged with alarm. "He's just being protective." "Protective or not," Logan said, and his hand suddenly went to his holster. "If he makes a move, I'm not taking chances." "Please, don't," Emily began, but it was too late. Hunter hadn't growled, hadn't barked, hadn't lunged. All he had done was take a half-step forward, ears, perked tail, still standing between Emily and the man with the gun. The gunshot cracked through the still afternoon like a whip. Hunter let out a sound, a high-pained yelp, and collapsed onto the pavement. Blood soaked quickly through his golden fur, seeping into the cracks of the sidewalk. Emily dropped to her knees with a scream that tore from the bottom of her lungs. "Hunter, no." Her small hands pressed against his side, trying to stop the bleeding, her tears splashing onto his muzzle as his eyes found hers, confused, apologetic, already dimming. Miss Creighton had dropped her tea. She stood frozen for a second before her instincts surged forward. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling but precise. She dialed 911 and began speaking with a voice that could still command a classroom. "This is Wanda Creighton, 114 Hawthorne Lane. I just witnessed a police officer shoot a little girl's service dog without provocation. The dog wasn't attacking. The child's in shock. Send someone. Now." Across the pavement, Logan holstered his weapon, his face unreadable. Dog was aggressive. He muttered more to himself than anyone else. Emily didn't hear him. She cradled Hunter's head in her lap, whispering, "Please don't go. Please don't leave me too." And then Hunter's tail thumped once, and stilled. The clang of steel weights echoed through the air as Noah Brooks guided a trainee through a clean and jerk rep. Inside the modest gym where he worked part-time as a strength coach, the lighting was warm and the walls lined with faded military flags, mementos of a past life that Noah never spoke of unless asked. At 39, he still moved with quiet intensity, his every motion precise, honed from over a decade serving in the Navy SEALs. His build was imposing broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a stance that told people not to mistake calm for weakness. It was during a short break between sessions, sweat dampening the collar of his gray t-shirt, that his phone buzzed. The name on the screen wasn't familiar, just a local number, but something in his chest tightened. He answered, towel slung over his shoulder. "Mr. Brooks, this is Officer Danvers with Maple Ridge PD. Your daughter Emily is here at the station. She's not injured, but we need you to come immediately." No further details were given, and none were needed. Noah was out the door within seconds. By the time he stepped into the front lobby of the Maple Ridge Police Department, his mind was already racing through possibilities. The fluorescent lights made the whole building feel cold and clinical. Behind a glass panel in a waiting area too large for one child, sat Emily, curled into herself on a hard plastic chair. Her NASA sweatshirt was stained dark at the sleeves. Her braids hung loose at the ends. Her gaze was distant, not even registering his arrival. Noah's fists clenched at his sides as he approached the front desk. "Where's the officer in charge?" An officer, middle-aged, neutral face badge reading Danvers, looked up from a clipboard. "You must be Mr. Brooks. I'm her father. Why is my daughter sitting in there alone? There was an incident involving her service dog. She was brought in by Officers Logan and Reed. No physical injuries, but she's in shock. We couldn't reach you immediately, so we followed protocol." "You're telling me protocol allows you to hold a child alone after killing her therapy dog?" Danvers didn't answer. Her eyes dropped slightly. "You can go to her." Noah pushed open the door and knelt beside Emily. Her body flinched at the touch, but then she recognized his voice. "Emily. I'm here now. It's okay." She didn't speak, just leaned into him, her arms locking around his shoulders like a lifeline. Before Noah could say another word, the glass doors of the lobby hissed open behind him. A firm click of shoes on linoleum announced the arrival of Wanda Creighton. She wore a navy blue wool coat, her silver-white hair tied in a tight bun, and her cane tapping sharply with each step. Though nearing 80, Ms. Creighton carried herself with a presence that silenced the room. She was a retired history teacher, a widow, and a community figure whose mind was as sharp as her tongue was quick. "I'm here to give a statement," she said to the desk officer without waiting for permission. "I witnessed the incident involving Officers Logan and Reed, and I have video footage on my phone that shows everything." Danvers blinked, unsure how to respond. Ms. Creighton strode directly to Noah and Emily. "I saw what happened. That dog wasn't attacking. He was protecting. Your daughter never raised her voice until the moment they shot him, and I've got it on video." Noah rose to his feet slowly. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Thank you, ma'am. That might be the only truth that makes it out of this building." Miss Creighton's gaze softened as she looked at Emily. She didn't deserve this, and neither did Hunter. Across town, the damage was already spreading in ways no one could contain. Jessica Monroe, a 13-year-old classmate of Emily's, sat on her bedroom floor, scrolling through comments on her newest video post. Blonde, freckled, and known for her lively TikToks and dance challenges, Jessica had recorded a short clip earlier that day while riding past the neighborhood park. She had arrived just in time to see the last moments before the gunshot, but not what led up to it. Her video captioned "Scary Moment." Dog lunges at cop showed Hunter stepping forward, and Officer Logan lifting his arm, then it cut out. She hadn't seen the full scene, but she posted it anyway. At first, the post got likes, shares, even praise from some kids she barely knew. But then came the backlash. "You cut out the part where the dog didn't even bark. Do you know that girl's dog died? This is gross. Delete it. This isn't funny." Jessica's heart pounded as she stared at her phone. Her throat felt tight. She didn't know what to do. She hadn't meant any harm, just thought it was something to share. But now she saw Emily's face clearly in that video. Not angry, not wild, just broken. She glanced toward her door, where her mother's heels clicked across hardwood floors in the hallway. "Mom," she called, hesitating. "I think I did something wrong." The house felt unfamiliar now, as though grief had rearranged the furniture without asking. Noah sat in the living room, well past midnight elbows, resting on his knees, staring at the floor where Hunter's bed used to be. It was gone now. He had carried it out earlier that evening, folded it gently into a trash bag. But the outline still haunted the hardwood, a pale square, where sunlight used to land in the morning, and where Emily once curled beside the golden fur of her only real comfort. Upstairs, his daughter had not spoken since the drive home. Not during dinner. Not while brushing her teeth. not even when he'd sat on the edge of her bed and whispered, "I'm here if you need me." She had nodded once the barest movement, but her eyes were as hollow as the hallway when he closed her door. Noah reached for his phone. The contact list was short. His thumb hovered for a moment, then tapped on the name Carla Rios. Carla had been his friend since the military, now working as a civil rights attorney based in Portland. She was sharp mid-30s, tall and elegant, with bronze skin and straight black hair usually pulled into a braid. Carla had a quiet ferocity about her, the kind that made judges nervous and defense attorneys take notes. Life had not always been kind to her. She lost her younger brother to a police shooting when she was 19, and she'd channeled every ounce of that rage into law school. The phone rang only once. "Noah," she said, alert. "I heard. I was hoping you'd call. I need help. You'll have it." By morning, Carla was at their doorstep. She wore a navy suit that seemed sharper than necessary for a suburban house call. Her heels clicked against the porch like gavel strikes. Noah opened the door and stepped aside silently. She entered, glancing briefly at the still-shuttered windows and the untouched breakfast on the table. "She still hasn't spoken," "No," Noah said. "Not since the station. And Logan, still on duty." Carla's jaw tensed. She set her leather bag down and unopened it. "I'm filing for an emergency injunction and requesting body cam footage. Also, contacting the ADA. They'll try to bury this." Upstairs, Emily sat in bed, arms wrapped around her knees. She stared at the wallpaper above her head, the solar system stickers her mother had helped her place one summer. Hunter used to lie at the foot of the bed, always close, always still. She remembered the warmth of his breathing, the gentle way he nosed at her when she whimpered in sleep. She hadn't had a nightmare since he came into her life. Now, she hadn't slept in 2 days. The door creaked open. Carla stepped inside, slow and cautious. "Hi, Emily," she said softly. "I'm a friend of your dad's. My name is Carla. I used to be afraid of speaking too." Emily didn't move. "When my little brother died, I didn't talk for 6 months. People thought I was angry or difficult. But I wasn't. I was just tired of screaming and not being heard." Emily blinked her fingers, digging into the sleeves of her sweater. Carla sat down across the room. "Your dog was trying to protect you. That's what heroes do. That's why I'm here, because he did his part. Now we need to do ours." Still no reply. But Carla didn't push. She stood quietly, left a card on the nightstand, and walked out. Elsewhere in town, Jessica Monroe stood awkwardly outside the front gate of the Brooks home, her bike leaning against her hip. Her hands were fidgeting with the hem of her hoodie, and her eyes darted toward the windows, unsure if she should ring the bell again. Her blonde hair was tucked under a baseball cap, and she wore her guilt like it was stitched into the fabric of her jeans. Inside, Noah noticed her through the curtain and sighed. "I'll talk to her," he said to Carla, stepping out. Jessica flinched when the door opened. "Mr. Brooks," she began, voice small. "Is Emily home? She's not ready for visitors." Jessica nodded. "I understand. I didn't mean to make things worse. I didn't see what happened before the shooting. I didn't know what it meant. I thought I was just sharing a video. You weren't just sharing, you were shaping a story." She swallowed. "I know. That's why I came to say sorry. And if Emily ever wants me to delete it or explain or anything, I will." Noah studied her for a moment. She was just a kid, but even kids left marks. "I appreciate that, Jessica." "I do, but it's going to take time." Jessica nodded again, her shoulders sagging as she turned to leave. Noah watched her ride away, unsure whether to feel anything but exhausted. Later that night, Emily finally emerged from her room. She stood in the hallway, thin and ghost-like in the oversized sweatshirt. Carla and Noah were at the table, sorting documents, whispering strategy. They looked up as she hovered near the kitchen doorway. "I had a dream last night," she said suddenly. Both adults stilled. Noah stood slowly. "What was it?" Baby Emily's voice was flat but clear. "Hunter was on the moon. He was waiting for me. There was no pain, just stars." Noah walked over his heart, crumbling in his chest. "You miss him?" She nodded. "So do I," he said. "So do I." Emily's eyes welled up. "I want people to know what really happened." Carla met her gaze. "Then, let's help them hear you." The early morning fog clung low over Maple Ridge, turning street lamps into orbs of pale gold, and cloaking the quiet neighborhood in a silence that felt too deliberate. Inside the Brooks home, Noah sat hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee growing cold beside him. The house was still, but his mind wasn't. Noah's military training had taught him that when the bullets stop flying, the real war often begins, and this war would be fought with paper silence and shadows. He had been up all night pulling records, cross-checking names, looking for a crack in the system that allowed a man like Brent Logan to carry a badge. Brent A. Logan, age 47. Terminated from the Portland SWAT Division 8 years ago following an internal investigation into misconduct. Noah scrolled through the limited-access PDF report, redacted in places, but revealing just enough a botched raid, an unarmed suspect hospitalized refusal to follow de-escalation protocols. There had been no charges filed, no lasting consequences, just a reassignment far from scrutiny to a suburban post in Maple Ridge. Noah leaned back in his chair, the muscles in his jaw flexing. Logan had a history, and someone had covered for him. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He opened the door to find Wanda Creighton on his porch wearing a thick forest green shawl and gripping her cane with steady dignity. Her eyes, sharp as ever, met his. "I brought cinnamon bread," she said, handing him a foil-covered plate. "And more importantly, I brought a name." Noah stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, she lowered herself carefully into a dining chair while Noah set the bread on the counter. Her voice was calm but deliberate. "My husband Charles served with a man named Vernon Teller. Vernon's son Jacob is now an FBI field agent based in Eugene. Good man, level-headed. I called him. You called the FBI." She tilted her chin. "I don't wait around for good men to get steamrolled. I told him what happened. He said he'd reach out quietly for now." Noah blinked. "Thank you. I've seen this before," she continued. "Logan didn't just wake up and shoot a little girl's dog. It builds entitlement immunity silence. It always starts small, but it always ends the same: someone innocent pays." Noah nodded slowly. "He won't get away with it this time." Across town, in a second-floor apartment above a closed-down print shop, Officer Mason Reed sat at his kitchen table, staring into a mug of untouched coffee. His police uniform hung by the door, the badge catching the light like it was mocking him. Reed was 27, slim, with fair skin and sandy brown hair. His hazel eyes were rimmed with sleepless red. Since the shooting, he'd barely spoken to anyone. Logan hadn't reached out. The department was already locking down the narrative. Reed opened a worn notebook, no heading, no official letterhead. Just a place to record what he could no longer say aloud. He began to write. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I should have said something. He never barked. She never screamed. The kid just stood there. The dog just stepped forward." He paused, pressing the pen to the paper like it might bleed truth faster that way. "I didn't stop it." The words sat on the page like a confession, but there was no one to read it. He didn't know if he'd ever show it to anyone, but he had to write it down. It was the only way to keep it from rotting inside him. That afternoon, Carla Rios sat in the makeshift office she had set up in the sunroom of the Brooks house. Her dark hair was braided over one shoulder, and her blazer had subtle creases from long hours of sitting writing calling. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she drafted a demand letter, requesting Logan's disciplinary file and all body cam footage from the incident. Her legal instincts told her obstruction was inevitable, but preparation would be her weapon. Noah leaned against the doorframe silently watching her work. "You're sure about this?" she asked without looking up. "He's got a history. I've seen enough to know it wasn't an accident." Carla nodded, her expression grim. "Then we press forward. No hesitation." Noah exhaled through his nose a sound of both tension and resolve. Emily doesn't know about the file, or the SWAT dismissal. "I don't want her to see that part yet." "She shouldn't," Carla said. "Not yet." Upstairs, Emily lay curled beneath her blankets, awake but unmoving. The curtains were drawn, and the only light came from a small nightlight shaped like Saturn. Her eyes were dry now, but heavy, like they had wept too many times in silence. She hadn't spoken again since her brief, dream-filled confession the day before. Her notebook, once filled with sketches of constellations and handwritten facts about the moons of Jupiter, lay untouched on the floor. Outside her door, Carla passed by and paused for a moment but said nothing. Then she moved on. By sunset, the house had fallen into its usual hush. Noah stepped onto the porch with his phone pressed to his ear. The voice on the other end was smooth, calm, and precise. "Mr. Brooks, this is Agent Jacob Teller. I understand we may have a mutual connection in Wanda Creighton." "We do," Noah replied. "She spoke highly of your character and your circumstances. I'm reviewing the material she shared and would like to hear the full story from you. Then, tell me where and when." "Off the record," Teller added for now. Noah nodded to no one. "That's fine. Just know I'm not interested in making noise. I'm interested in ending this the right way." There was a pause. Then Teller said, "That makes two of us." The rain came just after sundown, thin at first, then harder, veiling Maple Ridge in a restless hush. The kind of weather that blurred outlines and softened the edges of what was real. Inside the Brooks residence, Noah stood in the hallway, adjusting the final security camera, its red recording light hidden discreetly within a smoke detector casing. He had calibrated 4 cameras around the living room and entryway, each with the night vision and backup battery. Nothing about tonight would be left undocumented. Noah's expression was carved from stone. His black sweatshirt hung loose over his frame, concealing a small body mic clipped just below the collar. On his wrist, a rubber bracelet had been modified into a trigger switch for emergency cloud upload. The plan wasn't complicated, but it had to be precise. He turned to Carla, seated in the kitchen reviewing the audio sync app on her phone. "They'll be here soon," Noah said. Carla didn't look up. "You sure they'll take the bait?" He nodded. "Reed has been watching the house, and Logan's too proud to walk away from anything he thinks smells like a challenge. The false noise complaint was logged. They'll come. Emily, in the basement safe. The panic door's sealed. She knows not to come out until I call her by name twice." Carla closed her phone and rose. Her suit jacket was gone. She wore dark jeans and a navy long-sleeve shirt. Even dressed down, she looked prepared for court. Her black braid was looped into a low bun. "Noah," she said, "if this goes wrong, it won't." At exactly 8:42 p.m., headlights swept across the windows. The cruiser stopped engine idling. 2 silhouettes emerged black against the drizzle. Noah didn't move, his heart steady as a metronome. He waited. The knock came. 3 sharp raps. Not friendly. Noah opened the door slowly. Officers Logan and Reed stood under the porch light. Logan wore his uniform like armor-soaked shoulders darkened by rain. His face was as rigid as ever, pale, square-jawed, unmoved. Reed stood slightly behind him, his posture tighter than before. His uniform looked wrinkled like it had been thrown on. "Evening," Logan said. "We got a report of noise and disturbance. Thought we'd follow up." Noah stepped aside. "Come in." Logan didn't wait for an invitation. He crossed the threshold like it belonged to him. Reed hesitated, then followed. Inside, the air was tense with silence. Noah moved toward the living room where a framed photo of Hunter and Emily sat on the mantel. He paused just beneath the primary camera, its blinking LED invisible from below. "Funny," Logan said, scanning the room. "Place looks quiet. Maybe your report was false." Noah said, his voice low. "Baiting." Logan turned. "Maybe someone's trying to stir trouble. Officers just doing their jobs don't sit well with some folks." "You didn't do your job," Noah replied. "You killed a dog, you traumatized a child, and now you're standing in her house." Logan's jaw tightened. "You saying that's a threat?" "I'm saying I want you out of my home." Logan took a step forward, voice lowered. "You know who I am? You think your little lawyer and your quiet house scare me." Noah held his ground. "I think you're used to nobody watching." That was when Logan struck. A sudden sharp blow, his open palm slammed into Noah's chest, sending him backward into the wall. The impact was hard, but not disabling. Logan followed up, jabbing a finger at his chest. "You're lucky it was just the dog," he growled. Reed stepped forward. "Logan, shut up." Logan snapped, not even looking at him. Noah rose, slowly, pressing one hand against his ribs, his expression unchanged. He turned toward the bookshelf and tapped a hidden switch. A small vibration passed through the house, nothing anyone would notice. In the basement, Emily sat inside the safe room Carla had constructed from a repurposed storm shelter. She flinched at the faint thud above, but she remembered what her father told her. "Don't come out unless I say your name twice." Upstairs, Carla emerged from the kitchen. "This is over," she said, voice clipped. "You've assaulted my client. You need to leave now." Logan sneered. "Your client's a liar. His daughter made a false statement. The dog was a registered emotional support animal," Carla interrupted. "And this house is now under federal interest. I'd advise you to walk out." Reed looked at her, then at Noah, then at Logan. "I saw it all," he said quietly. Logan turned. "Don't." "I did," Reed repeated louder this time. His face was pale, but his eyes held something new. Clarity. "I saw the dog didn't attack. I saw her face. I saw yours." Logan took a step toward him. "You're going to throw your badge away for what some kid Reed didn't flinch. For the truth." Logan's fist clenched, but the moment was over. Noah walked toward the entry. "You're done, officer." He opened the door. Logan looked at Reed, then Carla, then Noah, and walked out into the rain. Reed stayed behind, standing near the door like someone unsure what came next. Carla turned toward him. "You're ready to give a statement?" He nodded slowly. "I am now." Later that night, the footage from the confrontation was uploaded to 3 encrypted servers. Carla prepared a statement of charges. Reed, his hand shaking, wrote the first lines of an official affidavit. And Emily, safe behind 2 locked doors in her father's planning, never had to see the violence firsthand. She only emerged when Noah knocked softly and whispered, "Emily, Emily." Only then did she open the door. The morning after the confrontation unfolded under a relentless drizzle. Maple Ridge wore its usual mask of order, manicured hedges, tidy porches, the scent of wet pine hanging in the air, but inside the walls of authority, something had cracked. The red recording lights from Noah's hidden cameras had done more than capture violence. They had sparked a reckoning. In the corner of Carla Rios's makeshift office, a laptop played the confrontation footage on loop. Each time Logan's hand struck Noah, each time his words curled into threats, Carla noted timestamps with the precision of a scalpel. Her dark eyes were rimmed with fatigue, but gleamed with purpose. Across from her sat Agent Jacob Teller, a man in his early 40s with closely cropped hair, olive skin, and an upright posture that whispered federal training. Jacob wasn't large, average, height, lean, but there was a stillness to him, a quiet discipline honed from years of undercover work. He wore a gray windbreaker and carried a leather folder that rarely left his grip. "What you captured," he said, nodding at the footage, "will tear through this department like fire through dry grass." Carla raised an eyebrow. "Then, let's get it to the people holding the hoses." They sat down together, reviewing a growing pile of documents. Reed's sworn affidavit was there, handwritten and signed with shaking fingers. Carla had formatted it for federal use. Alongside it were Noah's compiled files, Logan's SWAT termination reports of unfiled civilian complaints, and most damning of all, a series of internal emails leaked from within the department. "Where did these come from?" Carla asked, tapping the emails. Jacob hesitated. "An anonymous source in dispatch." "Let's just say your story hit a nerve." The emails included flagrant messages between Lieutenant Paul Monroe and Chief Davis referencing certain elements moving into the neighborhood and maintaining suburban values. Beneath the corporate phrasing lay a web of unspoken bias systematically enforced. They weren't just protecting Logan, they were weaponizing him. Meanwhile, at the Maple Ridge Police Department, a different tension simmered. Captain Eileen Davis sat behind her desk, tapping a gold pen against the armrest. Late in 50s, immaculately dressed with stiff posture, and a face that rarely betrayed her thoughts, Davis had built her reputation on poise. But this morning she was unraveling. On her monitor was the video sent anonymously stripped of source tags, but unmistakably damning. She played it twice, then clicked the attached link, a Dropbox folder, with years' worth of internal dash cam footage that had never seen public light. One video showed Logan shoving a teenager against a cruiser for jaywalking. Another revealed Reed reporting an incident edited out of the official records where Logan had drawn his weapon on a black delivery driver for moving too fast. Davis's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. She wasn't surprised. She was afraid. She picked up the phone. "Get me Lieutenant Monroe." Across the precinct, Monroe, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and a gut that strained his duty belt, answered, irritation in his voice. "Yes, ma'am. I need to know Davis said how many others knew." A pause. Knew what that Logan was a loaded weapon pointed at the wrong people. Another pause. "Most of us," he admitted. "But we figured as long as he scared the right crowd, you figured wrong," Davis said coldly and hung up. Back at the Brooks house, Noah stood on the porch with Jacob as morning fog lifted from the yard. "You think they'll move fast?" Noah asked. "They have no choice," Jacob replied. "What you've handed us is undeniable. It's not just one man anymore. It's a culture of silence, bias, and retaliation." Inside, Emily sat by the window. She had not asked to see the footage, but she could sense something had shifted. Wanda Creighton brought her a tray of breakfast, scrambled eggs toast, cut into stars, and placed it gently beside her. "You know," Wanda said, settling beside her in the armchair, "when I was your age, people said justice was a grown-up thing, something children couldn't understand. But that's not true. You knew something was wrong the second it happened." Emily didn't answer, but she nodded. Wanda smiled. And sometimes knowing is the beginning. That afternoon, Agent Teller walked into the U.S. Attorney's office in Portland with a USB drive and a printed summary. A few hours later, subpoenas were filed. By sundown, a multi-agency task force had been launched. Carla received confirmation Maple Ridge PD was officially under investigation for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. and at 6:03 p.m., Reed, still in plain clothes, walked into the Internal Affairs office and placed a second copy of his affidavit on the desk. "I want to read it aloud," he said. By nightfall, social media began to buzz. A leaked clip posted anonymously showed Logan striking Noah in his own home. The comments exploded. Hashtags surged. Justice for Hunter. Maple Ridge cover-up. Officer, Reed speaks. Jessica Monroe sat in her room watching the video with wide eyes. She felt both horror and relief. She had started with a lie, but now she was watching the truth break through. She clicked share, then whispered, "I'm sorry, Emily." The days that followed the federal investigation moved with strange quiet. The kind of quiet that followed storms, cautious, tender, uncertain. News vans came and went. Reporters clustered outside City Hall. A temporary chief was appointed at Maple Ridge PD while Davis was placed on administrative leave. Reed was under protection, his testimony now part of a growing case. Logan's name had vanished from the public roster. And in the Brooks household, something softer was beginning to stir. Emily sat at the edge of the back porch, her legs tucked beneath her like folded wings. The late afternoon sun stretched long across the yard, catching in the coppery strands of her hair. She wore a hoodie several sizes too large sleeves, half covering her hands, and her gaze was fixed on the patch of garden where Hunter used to sit. The earth was undisturbed now, but she could still feel the weight of his absence there, like a shape cut out of the world and never filled. She hadn't returned to school yet. Carla had arranged temporary remote learning, but Emily mostly ignored it. Most days she watched the sky instead, morning. Clouds, birds sweeping overhead, stars beginning to blink at dusk. It was all she could do not to disappear into memory. Noah watched her from the kitchen window, a dish towel in one hand, phone in the other. He had aged visibly in recent weeks, his beard slightly thicker, his shoulders more burdened, but his eyes still held that steady resilience, the kind you built when there was no room to break. The voice on the other end of the phone was soft female and carried a smile even over static. Her name was Tanya Levine, director of a non-profit animal therapy program called Second Light. Early 40s, short chestnut hair, kind laugh. Former social worker turned animal behaviorist. She had read about Emily's story online and reached out through Carla. "We have a rescue," Tanya said. "Golden retriever, 6 months old, found tied behind a shelter off Highway 39. His name's Sonny, and he reminds me of what your daughter might need." Noah listened in silence. "He's not a replacement," Tanya added. "No animal is. But sometimes healing doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes it means having space for a new story." He looked back out the window at his daughter. "When can you come by?" he asked. The next day, Tanya arrived in an old teal Subaru, the back seat lined with thick blankets and boxes of training toys. She wore a weathered green jacket and jeans, her face slightly wind-chapped, but warm with kindness. At her side walked a gangly young golden retriever with sandy fur, big floppy paws, and a tail that wagged like it didn't know sadness could exist in the world. Sonny. He was still lean from underfeeding, with a faint scar across his left ear and a slight limp in his back right leg. But his eyes, rich brown, wide and earnest, held the kind of optimism that made silence soften. Emily watched from the porch. She didn't stand. Didn't speak. Sonny bounded halfway toward her, then stopped, head tilted. Tanya kept her voice low and unhurried. "We don't ask them to trust us," she said gently. "We wait for them to decide." Emily glanced at Noah, who offered nothing more than a nod. She stood slowly, hands in sleeves, and stepped off the porch with measured steps. Sonny didn't move, just watched her tail sweeping gently. When she knelt before him, he licked her sleeve. Emily flinched. Then, cautiously, she reached out and touched the tip of his nose. He leaned into her hand. That night, she didn't speak at dinner, but she sat at the table. She ate half her pasta, and later she laid a folded blanket on the floor beside her bed. Sonny curled into it without being asked. In the following days, Sonny became a quiet presence in the house. He didn't fill the space Hunter had left, he shaped a new one. He followed Emily but never crowded her. Slept beside her door but never whined to come in. Played gently, quietly. Once, when thunder rolled in from the coast, she woke to find his nose against her arm. He hadn't barked. He had just waited. One morning, Emily finally spoke, just one word as she stood in the doorway of Noah's office. "Leash." Noah turned. "You want to take him out?" She nodded. Just once. He got up, slipped the leash from the hook and handed it to her. His hand brushed hers. "I miss him too," he said. Emily didn't reply, but she opened the door and Sonny followed her out. That afternoon, Tanya returned for a follow-up visit. She brought a new harness, a journal, and a toy shaped like a smiling moon. "She's not talking much," Noah said quietly. "She doesn't need to," Tanya replied. "She's moving again. That's louder than words." Carla entered the room, then holding an envelope. Her expression was unreadable. "The Department of Justice has officially filed civil charges against Maple Ridge PD," she said. "Systemic racial bias. Civil rights violations, internal cover-up." Noah let out a slow breath. "And Logan federal obstruction." Reed's testimony sealed it. They all stood there a moment in silence. Then Tanya glanced toward the window. Outside, Emily and Sonny were in the grass lying on their backs, looking up at the sky. "I think your girl is learning." Tanya said that some dreams don't stay broken forever. The house on Willow Bend looked different in the light of spring. The white porch railings had been repainted, the garden replanted with daffodils and purple hyacinths, and the welcome mat bore fresh muddy paw prints. Somewhere, laughter, thin but unmistakable, drifted through the kitchen window. The kind of laugh that had been gone too long and returned like a stubborn wildflower breaking through cold soil. Emily Brooks, now 12, sat cross-legged on the porch steps, her hair brushed and tied in a low ponytail, sleeves rolled as she fastened a small brass tag onto a new collar. Across her lap lay Sonny, the 6-month-old golden retriever, whose fur had grown thicker and more golden in the last few weeks, touched by the gentle balm of good food and constant affection. He wagged his tail lazily, head tilted, watching her with his signature look of hopeful curiosity. In her hands was Hunter's old collar-worn leather softened, by time the name tag still engraved in clear capital letters. Emily hesitated for a long moment. Then she fastened it loosely over Sonny's new collar, letting the older one sit above like a crown. "Not to replace," she whispered, her voice light as breath, "but to remember. You carry him with you now." Sonny licked her wrist and let out a soft sigh as he settled his chin across her knees. The screen door creaked behind her. Noah stepped out carrying 2 mugs coffee for himself, cocoa for her. He had shaved recently and his eyes looked less sunken than they had in months. He wore an old navy sweatshirt, faded but clean, and his shoulders, though still broad, carried less weight today. "She fits here," he said, looking down at Sonny, "like he always belonged." "He waited for me," Emily said, "even before I knew I needed him." Noah sat beside her, handing over the cocoa. The best ones usually do. They sipped in silence, warm steam curling toward the morning sun. Inside, Carla's voice drifted from the television. She had stayed the night in the guest room and was now being interviewed live on regional news. Calm and composed as ever, she sat in front of a bookcase and spoke directly to the camera. "Civil justice is only one step," she said. "What this family endured is the result of systemic failure, but their strength. Emily's strength has reminded us what courage looks like in the face of silence." Emily didn't look away from Sonny. Do you think people will still talk about it in a year? She asked. Noah considered. Some will. Others will move on. Is that okay? He nodded. As long as we don't forget. Later that day, they drove to the county courthouse. It wasn't a dramatic affair, no cameras, no crowd. Just a closed-door summary hearing where Officer Brent Logan stood before a federal judge with hands-cuffed charges, read aloud in a voice more clinical than vengeful. Civil rights violations, assault, falsifying reports, tampering with internal investigations. Logan said nothing. Reed, seated in the back of the courtroom, watched with a clenched jaw. He wore jeans and a collared shirt, now no badge. His face had softened since the night he gave his testimony, like something tight in his chest had finally let go. When Logan was led away, Reed didn't cheer. He only exhaled. Outside the courthouse, Reed approached Noah and Emily. She seems taller, he said quietly. Noah offered a rare smile. Maybe she is. Reed nodded toward Sonny. And this guy, officially ours as of this morning, Noah said. Reed crouched down and held out a hand. Sonny sniffed it, then placed a paw across his palm. Reed chuckled. Smart already. We're opening a new program, Noah added. Therapy dog training. I could use someone who knows the other side. Reed looked up surprised. Me, Noah nodded. You saw what others wouldn't, that matters. Reed stood slowly. I don't deserve this. Noah looked him in the eye. Then earn it. By midsummer, the Brooks house had settled into a new rhythm. Emily now rose before the sun most days. She and Sonny would walk the perimeter of the neighborhood together, his tail high, her pace steady. She had returned to school part-time, and even joined the library's Young Writers Club, though she rarely spoke during meetings. Instead, she wrote. One evening, as Noah passed her room, he saw her hunched over her desk, scribbling in a hardbound notebook with a worn blue cover. Across the top, in gold ink, were the words Hunter's Light by Emily Brooks. The pages were lined with sketches of Star's dogs and a girl in a hoodie walking beside a shadow that slowly turned into sunlight. Some nights, he heard her reading passages aloud to Sonny, who would sit near her bed, with his head tilted, listening like the good dog he was. On the last page, in small, careful handwriting, she had written, Hunter taught me that love is not lost when it leaves. It only changes shape. Sometimes it becomes memory. Sometimes it comes back in a different body with new eyes and the same heart. Sometimes love returns wagging its tail, waiting for you to be ready. Sometimes the miracles we pray for don't arrive with thunder or lightning. Sometimes they come in the form of a dog with quiet eyes and a golden heart. Hunter was more than a companion. He was a gift, a light sent in a time of darkness. And even when that light was taken too soon, God in His grace made room for a second sunrise through Sonny. This story is a reminder that no matter how deep the loss, healing is always possible. It may take time. It may come through unexpected paths. But when we keep faith, when we choose love over fear, justice over silence, and hope over despair, God moves. He restores. He heals. For every person watching this, if you've ever lost someone or something dear, know that God sees your pain. He never wastes a tear. He often sends comfort not in answers but in presence, in a child's courage, a neighbor's strength, a faithful dog's gaze. If this story touched your heart, share it. Leave a comment to encourage others. Subscribe for more stories of redemption love and the unshakable bond between people and the animals God places in our lives. And if you believe in second chances and healing after heartbreak, and in the quiet ways God still performs miracles, comment Amen below.